Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching another one of my videos. This is going to be a video about how to make a sea trout snake fly. So for those of you who are not sure what I'm talking about, that is basically what I am going to be making from start to finish. There are a few advantages to a snake fly. It's basically a very mobile fly. So this middle section is just braids. I'm going to show you how to make the mount and stuff from start to finish, but that is basically a sea trout snake fly. Full disclaimer, I don't actually fish with them. A couple of reasons why I actually prefer to fish with tandems rather than snake flies. A couple of reasons for that. I believe that tandems more or less achieve the same thing as a snake fly. But more often than not, I'm a bit of a lazy fly tyer in terms of I actually want to spend more time on the river than at the vise, and they are pretty time consuming to make. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is they're not, from a fly last, how long they will last, they are not great, because essentially if that mylar tubing gets chewed up, that's the fly pretty much done. Or if you bend the hook out, that's pretty much the hook done. Don't get me wrong, that's the same as the tandem for the tail end, but the body and everything tends to be a bit more robust on a tandem versus a snake fly. So that's why I don't tend to use them. People love them though, and they are undoubtedly a successful sea trout fly. So yeah, I've had a couple of requests of how to make them, so I thought I'd make a quick video on that for you. So I've got some cheap braid here. It's 30 meters, just fly line backing. It's basically the same stuff that you would make braided loops out of. Exactly the same stuff. Use the £30 stuff. There's no need to use the thinner stuff. You want a bit of rigidity that you will gain on the 30 as opposed to the 20, so do step up to the £30 version. Beyond that, you just want to cut a length, I would say around 20 centimeters or so. Let's cut a length of that off. So there's a couple of different things to take into account when you make these. So again, it is a bit of a time consuming fly, but it's still fun. Fly tying is supposed to be fun, not just about the end game at times. So you want a needle with a pretty chunky needle, and one that has a decent sized eye. So what you do is just pass really press down the ends of that braided backing and just slide it in through like so. Slide it up a little bit. Then what you want to do is bring in your hook, so be it a single or a double. Pass that in through the eye of the hook, the other end in through the eye of the hook, and then slide that down to connect with the needle. Bring the needle back around and puncture it into the core of that braid. Just puncture it in, slide it down the core of that braid. You don't need to go down too long. A couple of centimeters maximum is enough. Just to there, pop it out like so, and then just slide it up, and then pull that tag end down a little bit, slide it up and over, you see now, and then you can just pull that tag end through, slide the needle off, and what you're left with is the hook actually connected now to that braided backing. So what you want to do is, you don't really want to loop up in this section. If you were making a braided loop, you obviously would want to loop, but with this you don't. So that's all you do is just pull this up like so, and just slide that braid until it is butting in tight with that hook. Keep doing it until it's nice and tight. Keep working it up. Okay, that's perfect. With the tag end, you obviously don't want that tag end there. What you do is pull the main section, so this is your main section flowing up here. Just pull that back a little bit, like so, before coming in with your scissors, cutting off the excess, and now when you slide that all back over, you've got a really clean finish, like so. At this point, put a little dab of super glue just to create a bit of a bond. Don't go crazy with the super glue because it will affect how mobile the fly is, and obviously you don't want rigidity in this fly. That's the whole reason for using a snake fly as opposed to a tube fly, for example. So I usually just put it there, just where the doubled up section ends. So that's the first part. So the second part would be the eye section. So this is where you basically do this fly as long or as short as you want. So and obviously you will want a loop this time, which will be the head section of where you tie your nylon onto. This is another reason why I don't really like snake flies, is that when you create this loop, so the loop at the head of the fly, this loop here, if you I change flies without turning the torch on at night, so if I were to accidentally clip that braid, that's the fly done. So it's again not really in my eyes it's not a fly. Well, it has more, for me it has more faults than positives. So we just slid the needle back on, double it back, and we're going to puncture back into the core of that braid. Puncture it into the core, like so. Slide it down, almost to where it doubled up with you before. Pull this through, so to about there. Up and over. Draw that tag end through. Keep pulling through, and you can see a loop is now being created. So that's all we do now, is just slide that loop down until we've got a nice neat loop at the head. So don't leave it like a massive loop that's just going to look silly on the fly, but also not be very aerodynamic. So just bring it down. That's pretty perfect there. Switch it back around. Just bring in your scissors. Push it back a little bit as we were doing earlier. Snip, and then slide back over, like so. So that's your mount done. Okay, going to come in with a super glue again, and we're going to put some super glue again just where the two sections meet. So the body is mylar tubing, and with the mylar tubing you want thin stuff, okay? Don't go chunky, because you want not something that's just going to bulge out. You want a nice streamlined body, more or less, something that's just coating that braid core. So you want something, got some pearl there, got some really thin silver stuff there. The only thing it was, first of all, just measure up a section. Obviously just measure it slightly longer. I'd probably go 2 centimeters longer than what you need. Just cut up a length of that. The only thing with using if you haven't used mylar tubing before, it has like a cloth core, like a string core. Just pull that out, and then you're just left with just a hollow section of mylar or like a flash tubing basically. The only thing with using a much finer diameter tubing is that it's quite difficult to pass it over the body. It's a little trick from that perspective. Just cut a section of nylon, any piece of nylon that you got lying around, take that in through the eye of the hook, like so. Double up the ends, like so, with two ends doubled up. So all you need to then do is just pass those ends down through the core of the tubing. So just pass it down, take them both in, try and get them pointing in the right direction, in the same direction. If there is a bit of a curve in the nylon, just pass that down, keep feeding it down the core of that nylon, the core of the tubing, till it pops out the other side, like so. Just draw that up. What you can then do is, to help you just slide it over, you can just hold the nylon one side and just draw it up, like so. Really easy, really easy. Slide it up and over. So we got some excess, so just slide that down onto the hook, and then that's all you do is just pull one side of the nylon and it just pops off, like so. So that's basically the body and the mount ready to go. So this is after you've done that section. You might want to do that section in batches. From there we switch to the vise. So when you've created the mount, next thing is put it in the vise. I used to tie, when I used to fish snake flies, I used to tie most of my snake flies without a vise actually. Something to definitely try. Not the easiest things to do obviously, but it's actually quite good fun to do it. So yeah, historically I would have done a lot of these flies without utilising a vise. Anyway, make life easier, chuck it in the vise at this stage. What we're going to do is secure the braid at the tail end. So you've got two different options on this front. Or it can be done two ways. So just take a few really tight wraps. You've got a choice at this stage. You can either unpick all of this to create like a tail section basically, and a bit more of a strike point or whatever. I prefer to just snip this all the way around. So basically the excess tubing, I like to just snip it away, just tidy it up. Bit more time consuming, but we fish with our eyes first, and if something looks right to the eye, you're going to fish it with more confidence. So what we're going to do then, just take your thread over. You see I'm using like a hot orange thread too, which is going to bring a little strike point into play on that rear hook as well. So that is it, and at that point just give it a whip finish. Learning to do a whip finish by hand rather than tool can pay dividends in a lot of these flies where you can't really bring in your whip finish tool easily. So that's all you do. Before I'm going to snip the thread, so it's got nice thread tension there, I'm actually going to super glue over. That's going to stop anything from unraveling at that on that rear hook, just like so. Then come in with your scissors, snip that off. So that's it done. So the next part is the most challenging part. So you can do the next part again in hand. So historically I would have literally just been holding there and just tying in by hand. Again, not the easiest thing to do. So I'm going to show you a little trick now, which is actually going to involve switching vices. So what I've done now is I've swapped to my tube fly vise. You don't actually have to do that. I prefer it just for what I'm going to do next. And that's all I've done is I've placed a needle, just a standard needle, embroidery or whatever they would be used for. You'd have to ask my wife about that. But yeah, just a standard needle. Placed in the vise. It's not a fly tying needle, it's not a tube fly needle, you know, like this for example. They tend to be a little bit too thick, so it's a bit finer, and it's not, yeah, that's the one we did the braided loop with earlier, so it's definitely not as thick as that, so it's a much finer point. The only thing we need this for is stability, and what it's going to do is give us stability to finish off. So rather than having to tie in hand or create a special tool or whatever, this is going to actually make life a lot easier. So what we're going to do first of all, we got too much excess on the tubing, so just really stroke that tubing down onto the core just to create a nice streamlined finish. You don't want bulk, you don't want it kind of bulging all over the place. Just kind of stroke it down, keep stroking it down. You find the eyes but there, a little bit after the eye, just snip off that excess. What we then do is peel it back just to expose the eye, like so. What we then do is just take that needle in to the tubing, just into that core, just in the core, in between the in the loop, just in that crease between the two sections. Just take that tubing just like so. That's all that's going to do now is basically create a tying in point for us. That's all we do then. Brush that tubing, the mylar tubing, back over. Just keep stroking it. You've got a nice tight connection like so. Okay, happy with that. What we then do is bring in the tying thread. So we're tying this backwards basically. Obviously the hook would normally be pointing in the opposite direction. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but it's far easier than tying in hand. And yeah, most households would have a needle, so it makes it easy enough to do. I started that a little bit too far back, so I'm just going to bring the thread back up, just up to there. I don't want too long ahead. Just like so. Snip off the excess. What we then do is come in with the scissors. Be careful not to cut the braid underneath, but just peel away that excess material and snip it away. And this is where the tube fly vise gives you a slight benefit. You're twisting it around in a dead straight circle. Does make life a bit easier. Keep snipping them away. Again, make sure you don't snip the braid core underneath. Just like so. Perfect. Tidy it up. Okay. So there's the mount and the body now attached. We're going to now put a wing. So the main wing, just some black Arctic fox. I've already cut some here. Just don't go too bulky. Look for a nice taper. Look for that kind of teardrop shape. And strip, go into the base. Just take out any small loose fibers in the base which just add bulk. Don't add anything to the fly. Just work that wing into a nice shape before you introduce it to the hook. When you do introduce it, so bring it up first of all, measure it up, take your time, just a little bit, you want it protruding slightly beyond that hook. Okay, so just measure it up, and that's great, just there. When you're happy, just brush it into a nice shape. If it doesn't behave, wet it slightly. Make sure again, yep, perfect. Come in with your pinch and loop and tighten down. So you've got a nice firm base because you've got that needle underneath. That's giving you a really good tying in base. So there's the wing on. You can see the mobility in the snake fly already. It's obviously just drooping down, but you know, that's what you should be doing. Turn it over. You got the underwing. I've just got some red Arctic fox, scarlety red Arctic fox. Just a little pinch. You don't want that to be as long as the upper wing. You can do if you want, but I prefer it to be about 2/3 of the length of the main wing. Take a couple of turns back and then pinch and loop and secure it in. Cut off the excess. You can see the fly just coming together now. A little bit of flash in an overwing. It's got some pearl crystal hair, or no, it's not crystal hair, like a mobile. It's going to take 2 strands. What we're going to do is just double them up. So we've got 2 strands. So what we do is just take them behind the thread, up and over, bring them down the center of the wing, make sure they're going down the center, and you're happy, just tie over the base. It's a little bit tricky because you're tying in the reverse direction. After you've done a couple of turns, just make sure they're riding as you want them. They are, before taking your securing wraps. What you then do, these are too long, so then you can just come in with your scissors and just cut them off at different intervals. Don't cut them all the same length. Get them finishing at different intervals. But as a rule, I don't have any finishing longer than the wing itself. So if I just wet that down, you should see that all behaving nicely up there now. So what we do next, optional extra as always, jungle cock. A couple of jungle cock cheeks. Measure that up. Okay, 1 in there. A couple of wraps. Switch it around. Again, this is the beauty of that tube flight vise. Try and measure it up. They're both finishing the same length. That looks good. Like so. Get that flash out the way. So what we do then, just bend back the stems. The jungle cock was just moving a bit, so let me just give it a bit more. And that's the important thing about bending these stems back. It just stops those, you know, jungle cock is expensive, so the last thing you want is for it to just pop out when you're fishing. You want the jungle cock to last in that fly. Then do is just trim those stems back like so. Then it's just a case of tidying up the head. So don't be afraid of building it up slightly, especially with this fire orange. Just gives that little bit of a strike point. Just like so. Happy with that. So what you want to do then is come in with a whip finish. Again, this is where it's handy if you know how to do a in-hand whip finish rather than using a tool. Just a couple. And you can bring in the tool just to give you a neat placement. So bring in the tool just to slide it down neatly. And as we did with the tail section, I actually like to bring in the super glue at this stage before cutting the thread, just to make sure everything's nice and secure. Just work it around, and that'll just penetrate through, it'll just bond everything, because you got to remember we're using a needle in the middle, so we have got a little bit of a excess build-up basically, so there is a slightly hollow section in the middle where that needle exists, so you don't want anything pulling out, so a little bit of super glue again goes a long way. But that is the fly. That's your snip this off. That is your snake fly. Easy as that. So you can vary the colour of the wing, the underwing, the body, as you see fit. And that's all you do at the end then is this will just slide off. Takes a bit of encouragement, like so. You got a fly ready to go. So that's your snake fly. Easy as that. Again, they do work well, they really do, but for me they're a bit of a faff to tie, so I prefer fishing tandems and so forth. But anyway, hope you enjoyed that. If you did, I'd really appreciate a subscribe if you haven't done so already, and whenever I post a new video you'll be among the first to know. Anyway, tie a few up, take them to the river, and I hope they bring you luck. Tight lines.